My name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension, the podcast about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. We cover topics from LGBT issues to faith and doubt and mental health. We talk to biblical scholars and have conversations about religious abuse and leaving faith and finding it again. We also talk to pastors and skeptics and cult experts who are all sorting out their own journey of faith. Please join me in these conversations on Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy.
Welcome to the 11ty Life podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of 11ty Life. It's going to be a good one. I'm happy that you are here. Where you decide to park your ears is important, and we do not take it lightly when you decide to lend us yours for a little while. Today is the fourth and final episode of album commentary on our brand new record, Basic Glitches. I've been doing these last few episodes with the host of the Sacred Tension podcast and a good friend of mine, Stephen Long. We've been just kind of talking through all of these songs and the meanings behind them, a little bit of the production bits, but more sort of the stories and the origins of where the lyrics come from on a lot of these tracks. And it's been an amazing time. So today is our fourth and final episode in that series, and I think that you're going to love it. I would like to take a moment here at the top of the show and give a huge, warm unicorn welcome to a brand new podcast that we have as part of the Rock Candy Network. It is called Common Creatives, and it is a pop culture deep dive podcast hosted by these two amazing guys, Joe and Will. Every episode, they take a pop culture icon or property and just go hard against the paint with info and intel and discussion. Some of my favorites include their episode on Tim Burton. They have one on Stephen King, Rob Zombie, Jordan Peele, Star Wars. One of the latest ones is The Golden Girls. This is the kind of show that absolutely levels up your trivia game if you were into that sort of thing. I know I am. So if you think about it, head on over to rockcandyrecordings.com and grab an episode from them. Speaking of Rock Candy Recordings, our studio here that we do all of our podcasts and make all of our records and do all of our production work here in Western North Carolina is officially open. So if you're looking for a place to track your band's next record, or you're a singer-songwriter who's looking to make an album or an EP, or you need some mix work done or some mastering work done, we have an amazing group of people here to help you bring your creative dreams to life. Hugs and high fives to everybody over on the 11ty Life Discord server. You guys are absolutely amazing. Right now, as of today, everybody is talking about the top 3 11ty tracks that they want included on our acoustic EP. So for those of you who are not familiar, we did a Kickstarter to fund the release of the Basic Glitches record, the album that we're doing commentary for today on this episode. And all of the 11ty family blew past our original goal. And one of the first things that we offered them as a stretch goal was an acoustic EP of 3 11ty songs chosen by them. So right now that voting process is underway, and I just want to give a big old unicorn hug to all of you guys hanging out on the 11ty Life Discord server as well. Speaking of the Discord server, we have been playing around with some different ideas of ways to sort of cross-pollinate the audiences that we have for all of these Rock Candy podcasts, and one of the ways that we're attempting to do that is by opening up an official Rock Candy Recordings Discord server that all of the shows on the Rock Candy Network are going to be a part of. So if you are wondering what kind of people listen to Sacred Tension or what kind of people are listening to Common Creatives, and you are going to be able to find people who are just as nerdy and weird as you are on this new Discord server. Matt, how do you know this? I know this because I'll be on there. One of the things that we absolutely love about Rock Candy and about our shows is the sense of community that we feel like we experience with all of the different listeners, and we love to connect like-hearted people together. So if that sounds like something that you want to check out, head on over to the show notes for this very show, and you'll be able to get to that Discord server. Hope to see you guys over there. Without further ado, let's get into today's 11ty Life. So welcome back to our album commentary. This will be the very last episode. We've normally we would just do like one episode full of album commentary, but because Steven and I are having so much fun talking through these songs, it ends up being a little bit longer. Hopefully that feels a little more informal and a little more insightful than it would be if I were just kind of ticking off technical specifications on the songs that we make. But yeah, welcome back to our crossover episodes of 11D Life and Sacred Tension.
Hooray. All right. So what's the next song?
Awesome. So the next song, we have 3 more to go. The song is called Shelf Life. And this is probably one of my favorite songs from a sonic texture standpoint, because I don't feel like it sounds like anything else on the record. I feel like it has a little bit more of a dreamy quality. It originally started out, everybody has different approaches to songwriting. So you have the lyric part of a song that might come from a specific place or a thought or an idea that you have. And then you also have the musical inspiration for a song. And so for this one, I remember going on to this app that we have at the studio called Splice. So for everybody who doesn't know, Splice is essentially a hub where all of these different producers and artists share loops that they've made or chord progressions or kick, snare, hi-hat, drum samples, and it covers a plethora of different genres. So if you're super into techno and you want to start writing a techno song, you can download a loop that sounds really great, and you can kind of start writing to that loop. So you'll just kind of put that drum loop on and then play some chords around it, or play some, arpeggios, or try some different melodies over it. I love writing this way. Some people call it loop writing, and it's really, really cool because it gives you the opportunity to have a band in the room with you at the same time. And when you're pulling all of these different assets from producers from all over the planet, you end up taking your own songs in a direction that a lot of times you wouldn't have been able to do on your own if you were sitting there behind the console, making your own drum samples, making your own snare samples. And I do love doing that kind of stuff and digging into the nitty-gritty of that. But sometimes I just want to come down here and pick up the acoustic guitar and get a song out as quickly as possible. Splice is amazing for that. I'm not being paid to say that, and we're not getting endorsements from them. But I just want to say, for us in the studio, it has saved our ass so many times where, you come to the studio and you feel like the well might be a little bit dry. This well never ends.
That's cool.
So it is super, super cool.
That takes me back to one of our previous conversations about creative wells that we did on 11D Life years ago, back in 2018, 2017, something like that.
Yeah. We did. We had a creativity podcast. We talked about best practice for how to be creative. So I remember finding a loop that was a bunch of taiko drums. It sounded like The Lion King. It sounded like the backing percussion track for The Lion King. And so I started writing the song to that. And it ended up sounding like something from The Lion King, where it was a lot of really big, chanty, kind of tribal.
Like Odessa.
Verse. Yeah, the verses were super chanty and tribal.
I love that.
And maybe a little bit too much.
You're going to don your headdress.
Right. I think that when I first started out, it sounded maybe a little bit forced. And I got excited about it because I was like, we've never done anything like this before. And then I ended up writing the chorus to this song, which was way more chill. And it might have even been a few weeks before the record went off to mastering. I dove back into that session and I thought, this feels so weird because the verses have so much energy in them. And by the time you get to the chorus, it just feels like the song kind of falls flat. So I needed to tone down the verses in a way that made the chorus feel like it was elevated. And so I kept the same lyrics to everything, but I ended up rewriting it so that it wasn't as chanty. Yeah.
So this is one of the first times that I'm actually reading through these lyrics for this song, and I really, really love this. So the first, what's the word? Stanza.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Take back all the heroes, send us a loser. We all fight the admin and end up a user. All the people are crying, send us a savior, the kind that you find in big metadata. I love that. I don't know why, but I love that so much.
I'm so glad. So the thought behind the song was kind of everybody wakes up and feels the weight of the speed at which the world is spinning. You and I talk about this all the time, Stephen, our aversion to social media, but how necessary it is for us as creators to be able to promote. Yeah. And feeling like there are just these entire generations of kids, our generation included, where you don't know anything else of the world but the worship of celebrity and the worship of platform and the worship of influence. And you have all these people who are essentially developing an image for what they are. Like, people are now turning into tiny companies. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
and I hate it.
And it's all about branding. It's all about selling yourself. It's all about what's going to get clicks, what's going to get likes. And those things are all amazing for businesses. But at the end of the day, people aren't businesses. Business is just a facade that you wear, you know?
I'm really glad that you bring that up, actually, because I feel like it hits on this battle that I have with myself all the time as a creator. Because it's like, on the one hand, I am a business and my product is me.
Right.
And if I don't get those views, those clicks, those eyes on me, then I feel like I'm failing as a person in some way.
Yeah.
But then what I've learned and what I keep coming back to is it about the views or is it about relationships? And so I try to combat that endorphin rush I get.
Yeah.
I try to combat that high that I get because there's inevitably a depression after that.
Right.
Like, if one of my posts goes viral, which hasn't happened in many years, but I remember, like, back when some of my blog posts would go viral, the depression and the instability that would come because of that was just awful. And I think that was one of the reasons why I stopped writing for some time, because I couldn't handle, like, that yo-yo.
The trough.
Yeah. And so what I try to do, and I don't know how good I am at this, but I feel like I'm getting better at it, is to just remind myself that if I'm not connecting with people, with individuals, and hearing their stories, then it's like, what the fuck am I doing? That's the whole point. Like, that's connecting with people and being able to go out to coffee with them or being able to hear their stories. It's like, I'm not fucking Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
I'm not so huge that I can't have those conversations, and I probably never will be. So I hope that I can keep having that connection.
Yeah.
And so I relate massively to what you just said, because it's like, on the one hand, it's almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing that I feel. It's like, on the one hand, I get that endorphin rush from having a good day with my views and how that makes me feel kind of high. It makes me feel really good. On the other hand, trying to remember that at the end of the day, it's about being a person, not being a business.
Right.
It's about having good, healthy, fun, fulfilling conversations with people.
Because the business is marketable, but the individual is what's relatable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like this is kind of a sad song. It's very much like a lament of feeling like you're never good enough, feeling like there's always a next hurdle that has to be jumped over, feeling like you're in constant need of affirmation to have worth. And I feel like we don't talk enough about the intrinsic worth that people have outside of their platforms or their influence.
Absolutely.
Because at any moment, Instagram can shut your account down. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or it can be hacked and all of a sudden it's not there anymore. Like all these different things that we put so much clout into, they become a part of ourselves. And because they're so shallow, we become shallow in the sense that all it takes is for those things to be gone before we're in a complete existential crisis of who am I? What is my self-worth? Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I hate that. I know that it's a reality that we obviously create content that we like to promote. It's always nice to get downloads and views and subscriptions and follows and all those different things. They're really, really fun and they have their place. But this song in particular came from the opposite view of that, which is like, I'm pretty sure I wrote this at a time where pop stars were dropping left and right that month, like, or Instagram influencers, YouTube influencers. There were all these articles that were coming out about YouTube burnout and about
I was going to say,
maintaining,
like, dying or just dropping out.
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's so weird that we put such a premium as a culture on these people that have platforms, but the platform oftentimes ends up destroying that person.
It does.
And we look at everybody, like we're constantly evaluating each other through these really weird metrics. We're telling people what we think they're worth by how much attention we're giving them.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the people that are the closest to you oftentimes get completely overlooked. Like the people that are the most important in your life, the people that need the most love, that need the most affirmation, encouragement, affection, strong social bonds with others, we pass them over because they don't have this many followers.
Yeah.
Or we treat people different that we feel like have a platform that we feel like can help us. Obviously in the music industry is all that. Like it's, what's the last thing what's your Spotify numbers? How many downloads have you gotten? Like, what's the last huge show that you played? Like, what's that? People used to ask me all the time, what's the biggest crowd that you've played for? And I always felt like that question broke my heart because I treated the biggest crowd we've ever played for the same as I did for like the 3 kids that we played for when we were first starting out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I was taking joy in the fact that I was there with other people. And like, I let my joy be taken away so easily when I give my attention to everything other than what is in front of me.
You know, I remember when we were at Montreat together, one of the things that struck me kind of about your ethic as a creator, and I think all of us creators have an ethic that drives us, that is kind of the engine that determines how we engage with the world and what we create. And one of the things that I saw in you was you would put on these spectacular shows for like this little college crowd. And like how much, and you know, this was back when you were mostly doing Jelly Rocks, I think. And so you did several Jelly Rock shows at Montreat, and seeing that you put yourself as much into those shows as you did and as you would into any other show. And I remember being really impressed with that and kind of being moved by that because that was at a time when I was trying to kind of develop my own voice as a creator.
Yeah.
And that informed me as a writer. It's like there are times when I write a blog post and it gets thousands of views, and then I write a blog post and it gets like 30 views, and you never know. It's like you can never determine what is going to be successful. You write, I think, you know, some writer, I forget who, said you write a hit the same way you write a flop.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and actually I just had this experience last week where I wrote a blog post and I was like, this one's going to be huge. I know it. I've worked on this one literally for months. Like it's been on the back burner for months and I've been thinking about it and kind of tweaking it and working on it. And then I published it last week and a few people liked it. And then I swear, sometimes an article that I write that, you know, I wrote at, you know, 8 a.m. when I'm barely awake, just to get something out there, just blows up. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I know. I just feel like a moving target. I've always thought about that in terms of like, think about your favorite artist or author and you go to see them at a show and there weren't as many people there as the artist or the author was expecting. And so they're on stage acting bummed out the entire time because they are disappointed that there aren't more people on board with their shit. What a fucking mood killer.
For real,
somebody that pays to come to a show or gives up time, even if a show is free, somebody's giving you a piece of their life. They came to share that with you.
Yeah.
And for you to be so far up your own ass that you can't be present with those people, I feel like that centers me a lot of times.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Putting it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it would mean so much more if you went to go see like a book reading or I'm just going to like fantasize here. If I got to go to a book reading by Neil Gaiman, you know?
And it was just five other people.
Me and 5 other people there.
It'd be amazing.
If he took the time to spend time with all of us, if he made it more intimate, you know, and just reframed everything that was happening to be about us.
Yes.
That would be so powerful in that moment.
Yes.
for me. And so I just
Absolutely.
always think like, this moment is still special. The numbers of people here don't matter. There will always be like better promoted shows
Absolutely.
or worse promoted shows, or
And there will always
the
be
nature
artists.
of being an artist.
There will always be artists who are better than us.
Oh
Like,
my God,
period.
yes.
Like all the time. And so it's like, is our goal to be better, to be the best, or is our goal to connect with people?
Right.
And, something Timothy Wilds always said, and, our mutual friend, he hasn't been on the show in a while on Sacred Tension, but he's had several episodes on Sacred Tension, and he's an incredible musician. And one of the things that he always said was, and still says, I presume, I haven't taken any lessons from him lately, but he always says, artists are servants. Artists are doctors and nurses in a hurting world. It isn't about us. It is about us being medics in a world that desperately need comfort,
care,
and refreshment. And he talked about music being like refreshment, and even if it's a silly song, or even if it's just a lovely song, that the refreshment that song gives to someone is so vital. And I think that's one reason why podcasting is so huge, because there's some really, really lonely people out there. We're in a kind of a loneliness epidemic. The number of guys, especially, who I, at work, who I talk to, a lot of the men who we hire at work, some of them have told me, they're like, yeah, I don't have any friends. I just go home and play video games. The number of guys who've told me that is just mortifying to me. And I think that there's something so intimate about listening to a song or listening to a podcast. And it's like this voice is in your head. It's in your AirPods. It's in your earbuds, and it's right there. And it's so intimate. Yeah. And it isn't a substitute for friendship, but it might give people enough to get through the weekend or through the week. Right. And so it's like, that puts it into perspective. It's about what kind of refreshment that we can bring to artists or to the people listening. Right. Yeah.
So I hope that, I know that people would probably, I've already gotten a few emails from people that are like, this song is really sad. Like, why would you write something like that? And my response to that is, sad songs are immensely important because they allow us a moment of catharsis and empathy for each other. And they help us to be seen. Like, I love sad songs because they validate my sad emotions.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think that's super important for all of the like techie people. We talked about this off mic. I'll probably do like some solo buttons that break down all the nitty gritty and stuff. But this song is a bunch of loops that I threw together from Splice, and it was made on two different keyboards, a Juno 106 and a Prophet Rev 2, and that's where most of the sounds come from. But there's also this software synth called Avenger that's really amazing, where all the little pluck sounds come from. I can't remember if they're like guitars or bells or something, because they get mangled and twisted around into something else. But yeah.
Cool.
So there's that.
That's awesome.
So the next song on the docket is Dizzy.
I love this song. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, hold on, let me find it on here. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, it's like all the awesome chill synth wave that I love listening to. Yeah. I love that stuff.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Yeah, this song it's completely just a couple of drum samples that I threw together into a loop. I think there might be a couple loops on there, and that's just a Juno 106 and an SH 101 for all of the super synth nerds. But these were all hella old synthesizers from like from 1983 and 85, I think. And I loved how noisy and gritty and retro that they are. And I remember coming down to the studio and just firing up the Juno and just kind of playing around with some chords. And I finally found these, what I thought were really fun voicings of those chords themselves. And I just kind of looped that back around and started playing over top of it and singing some different melody stuff over top of it. And this is one of those songs I had no idea what it was about until it was kind of almost over. I really enjoy writing narrative songs about people, because I feel like the people that I write in my songs are sort of these Frankenstein monsters of people that I know in real life or conversations that I've had with people in real life. And this song is about just a really lonely and manic girl who is trying to figure out where she fits in life and frustrated by her own duality, I guess you could say.
I was reading this and thinking, this sounds like a hookup.
You would, Stephen.
I'm sorry. Dizzy baby raising hell, ending back at that apartment that you call a prison cell. She says lately, I can't tell if I love the anonymity or just the painted shell.
Yeah,
sounds a lot like an unhealthy hookup.
It's somebody who's constantly pulling people close to her and then pushing them away and trying to come to terms with that.
Is this you or someone you know? Or both?
Well, I mean, I said it was about this fictitious girl, but I'm also kind of a fictitious girl. On paper, I mean, that's probably what it looks like.
I mean, it's all of us, though. We've all been here.
Exactly.
We've all experienced this.
There's absolutely a little bit of me in all of this, like for better or for worse. So yeah, to me, this is one of the more like just vibey, chill, turn the lights off, put on a neon sign in your room.
For sure.
Live nudes or
like the one we have right here above my head. Not nudes. Did you just say nudes?
Well, because most neon signs say live nudes, right?
Do they?
That's what I thought. I watched movies from the 90s, so that's all I saw.
Oh, well, that's when I was practically in a cult. So
Right. Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
So the last song on the record is Natsu No Yo, or I think you're supposed to pronounce it Natsu No Yo. That's what Google told me. It was supposed to be.
Is this Summer
pronounced
Nights?
as
Another summer night?
Right.
Okay.
So Natsu No Yo in Japanese means summer night.
Okay.
Yeah. This was the last song that I wrote for the record, and it was because I knew that we needed a 10th song, and I wrote it really, really fast. There's this amazing J-pop artist called Kyari Kyari Pamyu, and she's amazing. Her music is absolutely the happiest, little sparkly, transcendent thing.
Glitter
ever.
overdose.
Oh yes, I absolutely love it.
That's awesome.
And a friend of mine sent me some stuff from her, and I spent the next 2 or 3 days like working around the studio, just like having that on in the background. And if you go back and listen to her stuff, this song sounds like a complete ripoff of
that's awesome,
of her vibe and like what she's all about. And I mean, she's massively, massively popular, but she was absolutely an inspiration for this.
I love that you admit that.
Yeah, why not?
Exactly. No, I love that because, you know, we all have
I'm not going to vanilla ice anybody's ass and be like, no, mine's different.
Well, no, like we all emulate, we all copy artists that we love.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think being able to admit that and being able to say that I am trying to capture the vibe I felt listening to this one particular artist or reading this one particular writer.
Yes. Artistry manifests itself in the same way that genetics do. We can all trace it back to a tight origin point.
Absolutely.
But every time that we internalize somebody's music, our own identity, our own personality, it transforms the way we listen to that, the way we perceive that music. And so I feel like I absolutely grew up with all those kinds of influences that meant a lot to me. And my first foray into songwriting was literally taking like riffs that I heard other bands play,
copy and
pasting and doing my own thing with it. And over time, you kind of start to develop your own voice. And the only way you do that is through imitation. It's the same way that you learn from your parents.
Yeah.
You know, how to be kind and how to share and how to.
Yeah. So Stephen King, who's one of my favorite writers, he has a fantastic book called On Writing. And it's maybe like one of the most formative books of my life because I read it. I read it back when I was in high school and just absolutely loved it. But he talks about that. And he talks about how the two great rules of writing are read a lot and write a lot. And that's it. He says that is it. Those are the two great commandments. Yeah. Read a lot and write a lot. And how you will start by emulating and copying the people you love.
Right.
And then the more you write, the more you grow, the more you will discover your own voice. But those writers will never stop. I mean, this is my embellishment. Those writers will never stop being part of you. It's like Oscar Wilde and Ray Bradbury and C.S. Lewis and all those writers I loved growing up. Like I will never stop writing like them in some way. I will never, or they will never stop being part of me.
Yeah.
Because those were the ones who I started out copying.
Yeah.
And Hunter S. Thompson. And it's like the list goes on.
Yeah. I mean, all art is there for you. I feel like I learned this pretty early on in my career, that every record that you purchase, every band that you get into, every song that you hear is more than just a song. If you're an artist, it's also a textbook.
Absolutely.
It's also a way of getting into the heads of like other people. This is why I love apps like Spotify, because I get to come across so many different bands that are making wildly eclectic,
weird
styles
shit
of music.
Yes.
And I love one of the things that and I'm pretty sure that people that have written songs with me before would maybe back me up on this, but like I love it when I notice people thinking about something in a different way than I would. You know what I mean? I get so much pleasure from like seeing behind the curtain of somebody's creative process, because to me it's like a way of absorbing that power. It's like you always want to be the ultimate X-Man, who can take on the powers of the other people that you're working and writing with. And I think it makes you a stronger artist. It makes you a more empathetic artist to the things that other people create.
So that reminds me of something that I don't know if C.S. Lewis actually said, but I think so. It might be apocryphal. I think it was in the movie Shadowlands. So I don't know if it's actually a quote from him or if it was just something the writers of Shadowlands said. But in that movie, Lewis says, we read to know that we're not alone. We read to feel less alone.
Yeah.
And that's why we read stories, because, the human condition, I think, is one of feeling immense loneliness. And so songs and stories help us reach across that kind of infinite void between people, because we are bound within these flesh shells and ultimately can never understand what it's like to be in another human being's mind. And that kind of results in this sort of infinite loneliness, and kind of there's that enormous sadness of that fact. It's like when I lay next to my partner in bed and realize I have no idea what's going on inside his head. Like really, at the end of the day, what is going on inside his mind is a complete mystery to me. And
I feel like, to tie it back to the Lion King thing that we were talking about earlier, they're like, in the same way that we grow gardens of food, we ingest that food, or maybe we just show up at Orion's buffet. Okay. We take all these different pieces of things and we ingest them, and our body in turn creates something completely new, besides poop, of course.
Of course.
We translate that into energy, into thought, into process, into artistry. And I feel like in the same way, like the art that's being created around you is a buffet that's happening on a completely psychological level. Your brain is ingesting all of that information, and you will naturally turn that into something that you enjoy, into something pleasurable, into something cathartic, in the same way that that's what your body does with food when you ingest it.
Yeah.
And I wish that there wasn't...
transform it.
Right.
You turn it into something new and it becomes part of you.
Right.
Yes,
right. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And this is something different than like, copyright laws. Well, like you ripped off this melody, or you did, you did.
No, this is something like much deeper,
much more intrinsic,
much more fundamental. And I know I've been kind of going on a lot about C.S. Lewis in this episode, but he has this incredible quote that reminds me so much of what you're talking about here. And in this case, it's about reading. And I think this was in a letter or something that he wrote. I might be wrong about that. But in this case, it's about reading. But I think it also applies to music and songwriting and this process of ingesting the work of other people and making it your own. He says, Those of us who have been true readers all our life seldom fully realize the enormous extension of our being which we owe to authors. We realize it best when we talk to an unliterary friend. He may be full of goodness and good sense, but he inhabits a tiny world. In it, we should be suffocated. The man who is contented to be only himself, and therefore less a self, is in prison. My own eyes are not enough for me. I will see through those of others. Reality, even seen through the eyes of many, is not enough. I will see what others have invented. Even the eyes of all humanity are not enough. I regret that the brutes cannot write books. Very gladly would I learn what face things present to a mouse or a bee. More gladly still would I perceive the olfactory world charged with all the information and emotion it carries for a dog. Literary experience heals the wound without undermining the privilege of individuality. There are mass emotions which heal the wound, but they destroy the privilege. So what he's talking about are kind of mass emotions that obliterate the self in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
In them, our separate selves are pooled and we sink back into sub-individuality. But in reading great literature, I become 1,000 men and yet remain myself. Like a night sky in the Greek poem, I see with a myriad eyes, but it is still I who see. Here, as in worship, in love, in moral action, and in knowing, I transcend myself and am never more myself than when I do. That is one of my favorite quotes of all time because it captures how in ingesting all of these other pieces of art, A, we become less alone, but B, we become more of ourselves even as we see through the eyes of many.
Right.
And that to me kind of is an expression of what you're talking about. That's it.
End
rant.
I love that quote.
Yeah, it's one of his lesser known quotes. You know, C.S. Lewis kind of gets
it's long.
It's long. Sorry about that. I just did a dramatic reading.
No, it's
here.
great.
But no, and it's one of his lesser known. A lot of his best stuff is lesser known because there's kind of the level of vapid evangelical Christianity.
Right.
C.S. Lewis, and then there's this really rich layer beneath all that I think a lot of people miss. But anyway,
I wonder if you compare your reading of that quote to your reading of the lyrics to Cookie. Oh my God. That's fantastic. I think at the end of the day, closing thoughts on the record. Maybe let's do that.
Okay.
Because we have a little bit of time left on this episode.
For sure.
I would hope and maybe even pray that this record in some way is cathartic for people who are really hurting and a source of joy or frivolity or silliness for people that need it in the moment that they need it. Because I feel like that's what it was for me. Ultimately, my only gauge I have of whether or not something is good is whether or not I enjoy it. And I feel like I just kept working at this record until I enjoyed all the parts of it. It kind of tickled all the parts of my brain that I really liked. And yeah, I hope that it does that for somebody else, particularly people who feel like they are in this in-between phase of feeling like they might be ready to move on from their understanding of the religion that they were brought up with, or even their worldview that they have from old tapes that they're playing, about themselves or about the world around them or about others, and just swap out the tape. Yeah. And try something new and see if you're elevated by it.
And I think that one of the things that I love about this album is how it kind of demonstrates that life is still pretty awesome even beyond that point. Because I think for a lot of us who are coming out of or coming to terms with some kind of toxic religious upbringing, we all reach that point at the beginning of the Lord of the Rings movies where Frodo and Sam, where Sam stops in the cornfield and he says, if I take one more step, this is the furthest from home I've ever been.
Yeah.
And how terrifying that is because you don't really know what's beyond that point. And when you've been told that beyond that point is hell or brokenness or just terrible evil, it can be terrifying.
Well, for them, it happened to be all of it.
For them,
he
maybe
did take one more step and just about died.
Maybe that's not the best metaphor.
No, I completely understand.
But it's like this album, there's a lot of joy in it and there's some grief in it, but there's also just a lot of fun and joy. And that's really important for people like us who are grappling with our religious background to understand that they're beyond that point, beyond kind of that point of no return when you decide to walk away from your faith or from your religious community or what have you. Yeah. There's still so much fun to be had, and maybe even more fun than there's ever been in our lives previously.
Or I would even take the word fun out and interject freedom
and joy, more than just fun, but joy, just pure joy. And, there are moments of feeling lost and there are moments of feeling cut adrift. One of my friends talked about her deconstruction of religion as like the movie Gravity, like just suddenly not knowing which way is up or down, no point of reference, and how really scary it is. And it's terrifying for lots of people, but the ability to just take that in stride and still be able to somehow enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And hold out faith and hold out hope that there's still a lot of fun and joy to be had and freedom to be had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's beneath, lyrics like "They call me Red Cup because I'm solo." I think there's actually a lot of wisdom and depth in this album, and I think that's why I keep coming back to it. I've been listening to this album just about every day, like every morning, and I fucking love it. Like, do you want to sign my tits now? Do you have a Sharpie?
No, I think that's... So first of all, that's very, very kind of you, because I feel like most of the time when I make a record, the last people to tell me that they enjoy it are my friends. Like, I remember this record came out, and on the day it came out, we ended up going out to dinner at a Mexican restaurant, and I got in the car, and my sister-in-law had just bought a new car, and she wanted to drive us there because she wanted to show us her new car. And when we got in the car, she had our record on, and she was like, "Hey, it's your release day." And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And then without skipping a beat, she just like turns on Cookie. And
that's awesome.
We got about 15 seconds into it, and we're all kind of like looking at each other because it's awkward to hear yourself singing over you talking to other people like in the car. And finally I said, "Noelle, we don't have to do it." She's like, "Yeah, okay, you're right."
That's how I feel about my podcast. It's like whenever I'm editing my show and someone comes into the room, I have to turn it off.
Yeah.
Because it's weird and awkward to me having other people listen to my voice with me. Oh, I can't stand that.
Unless you're in a completely safe environment and space. Yeah. Because I have bands come in here all the time, and the first thing we have to do is listen through to demos. So I try to be a really accommodating fellow artist when it comes to listening to stuff. But I'm always thinking through how to try to make it better or how to improve it in some way. And hopefully I create a space in which they feel like I want the same thing that they want, which is the best song we can get out of this material. But I have a really hard time when I'm in the car with my wife and she puts on 11tyseven.
Oh, she does? That's so sweet.
Well, she doesn't do it anymore because I've flipped my shit so many times. But it's just, it's a really awkward feeling. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It makes me feel like really vulnerable in a way that I don't feel comfortable.
I totally get that. Yeah, it's weird.
Like I would never turn on a podcast like around my parents, or if I caught my parents listening to my podcast, I would be like, let's just shut it off. Like,
there are some people who I'm like, if I find out that you're listening to my podcast, I'm going to kill myself.
That's not dramatic at all, Stephen.
I know.
You got to level that shit up.
I really do.
Well, I've absolutely enjoyed these crossover episodes, and I really, really hope that even though at times I'm sure that they were a little bit wordy or took a couple of rabbit trails here and there, I hope that they've been interesting and engaging, and that there was some information in there that made you as a listener, yes, I'm talking to you now listening to the podcast, feel a little more seen, or feel like there's somebody out there in the world who is having the same feelings and doubts and insecurities and struggles that you are. And if that's happened in any way, I will take so much joy in that.
And it's okay if you don't like the album.
Yeah, and it's okay if you
like
don't
if you have listened to this 4-parter, I'm talking to Sacred Tension.
You're like, fuck this album.
If you've listened to these 4 episodes and you're like, yeah, I hate this band, that's fine.
And it will be back to your regularly scheduled program.
Yes, exactly. Matt will be back sometime to talk about something else at some point.
Yes, but to all the 11D lifers, thank you so much for being such sweet and kind and beautiful, wonderful people. And to all the Sacred Tension listeners, thank you for giving me a little bit of your sacred space. I do not take it lightly that I was able to have some of your attention. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for spending some time with us. It means the world to us. All right, we did it.
11T Life is a production of Rock Candy Recordings and Rock Candy Media. Every time you subscribe to 11T Life, a unicorn disembowels your greatest fear.